Hello, delighted to be chatting with F.K.Marlowe, myself and Steve there.
Hi, good to meet you. And also, or Aka Bell, isn't it? Or is it Le Belle Dame?
Well, there's a story behind that. I've got 3 kids, and obviously you can tell by looking at me, I'm a lovely, kind, cuddly mom. So when I started writing horror, they were horrified and shocked. And they were big fans of Coraline by Neil Gaiman. And so we had this joke that when I'm writing, I'm the other mother, aka the Beldam, which is where it comes from. So when I started writing on Wattpad, that was what I chose for my name, and that's where we are.
That's a seriously weird film, that Coraline. It scares me, that actually. The grandkids love it, but it terrifies me. The buttons for the eyes and things, and the stitches inside the buttons.
And then when she turns into a spider, and it's terrifying. My kids used to have nightmares about it, but I didn't stop them watching it again and again.
So how's life in Vancouver then, Bill?
It's usually absolutely lovely. I usually can't believe my luck because we've got the mountains behind us and we've got the ocean. I've never lived anywhere you can walk to the ocean before, and it's just such, I feel constantly spoiled. But the last few weeks, it's been living up to its name of Raincouver. So I don't know if you can see, but I'm actually starting to develop webbing between my fingers. But allegedly, according to the locals, we can expect somewhere a little bit later on, and maybe September will be really nice as well. So swings and roundabouts, but it's an amazing place to live. And I wake up every day, dropping the kids off to school, and just look up and think, my God, I live in a picture postcard. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. But my daughter moved to New Zealand a few years ago, and I went there about 5 years ago. And driving through, mountains each side of you, with even on a hot summer's day, it's, there's ice on the top and snow on top of the mountains. It is a bit surreal, beautiful.
Yeah, I know. I mean, even now, if we drive a couple of 20 minutes, half an hour up the road to one of the mountains, there's still snow on the top, and it'll be there all summer as well. Yeah. My husband's only just finished skiing for the season, and we're in June. So.
Wow, yeah. Mind you, I must admit, I've flown into Canada in late May, early June, and got off the plane to torrential downpours of rain. And then a few days later, cracking the flags, the sun's fantastic. And a few days later, it was snowing. Yeah. I mean, that's how drastic and extreme it can be in parts of Canada, I found.
Which part was that?
That was not far, about 3 hours from Calgary.
Wow. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, I've joked before that, if you don't have boots and a coat permanently drying in front of a fire somewhere, are you even in Canada? So.
Yeah. So before we go on to ask about your writing, I want to know a little bit about your travels and what's this how can you be an interesting person, by the way?
Well, I used to do lots of interesting things. When I was in my 20s, I was on the Edinburgh Fringe playing an 18th century prostitute. That's quite...
Wow.
Tell us about that.
It was brilliant. It was an all-woman play. It sounds awful, actually, when I describe it, but it was fun. It was an all-woman play, and it was about this mistress of one of the Georges, I can't remember which king, who had 15 kids by him, but was never because she was an actress, she was never legitimized, and she was shunned and all the rest of it. It was a really good play, but I was the evil, manipulating younger actress who was had no morals and was sleeping away to the top and stabbing people in the back. It was good fun. It was fab. So, when you kind of been doing things like that, and then all of a sudden you wake up one morning and you're respectable, it's quite a shock to the system. So I'm not as interesting as it used to be.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about. Well, you were from Shropshire, went to London, Vancouver via Beijing. Yeah. Explain a little bit about that one.
Yeah, I'm a Shropshire lass, born and bred, and it's lovely speaking to people with accents. I don't know if you've heard the audio that I've done for some of the books, but when I'm reading the books, I suddenly feel like I have to try and be Judi Dench, so my voice goes very proper.
The moths themselves were odd, disconcerting creatures. A scientist doesn't speak in terms of beauty or ugliness, of course. The thrill of discovery confers an allure upon any specimen, and yet Matthias found them difficult to look at for long. even under a microscope. Like their cousins, the Orthograptra, their long, tapered wings resembled dead leaves, but the new species had developed this feature to mimic a state of advanced decomposition, with semicircular patches of black-brown apparent decay ringed by a lurid yellow border. Their bodies were covered in a grey fuzz that looked like mould. The whole disguise was so effective as to be repellent. Sometimes he felt as though he could smell them. It was their proboscis, though, that visitors came to see. Those long, curved mouth parts specially adapted to pierce human skin and drink blood.
It's nice to be speaking to you guys and actually sound like myself. So yeah, I'm a Shropshire lass, and then I went to uni, and that was a bit of a shock to the system. You know, if you come from, well, you know what it's like when you're sort of working class and you come from a little village or whatever, and then you go to a university where everybody's privileged and, you know, been told their whole lives that they're important and they're special, and all of a sudden you're like, what the heck am I doing here? So that was a shock to the system, but it was amazing, and I met some of the best friends of my life there that I'm still friends with. So that was the first move. Then I went to London, because everybody does after they finish university, and then met my husband, and we've been in London about 10 years together, and our kids are mixed heritage, because he's half Iranian, half Chinese. And our kids started saying crazy stuff like, well, I don't know any Chinese people. You're in London, of course you do. So we thought, well, this is a problem. They've obviously got no idea of any of that side of their heritage. So we thought, well, we'll try and get a job in Beijing so that they can at least know something about who they are. So my husband does computer graphics for films. And he was like, well, no problem, I'll go and get us a job there and we'll all go. And he was going to go and work on a project, but then the project that he was going to work on got put on the back burner. So he went, oh, we'll just go straight to Canada instead, because it had always been on the cards, because he basically nationalised here. I'm going to leave a pause here because you're going to want to cut this.
No, carry on. It's interesting, it really is.
But anyway, so he grew up in the Iran-Iraq war, and he left when he was about 13, as a lot of boys his age did, for political reasons. They had to, and so he went straight to Canada, and from the age of about sort of 13, 14, he's considered himself Canadian. So we always knew we were going to end up here one day, because it's a great place to raise kids, and the culture is just nicer and people are more open. And we were living in London, and the high school up the road had a knife scanner on the doors and things like that. So we were like, all right, when they get to high school, go and live in Canada. But we thought we'd go to China first and do the cultural thing. So his job contract thing got backlit. So he was like, oh, well, let's not do that then. We'll just go straight to Canada. And I said, no, we're going. We've decided. We've got our headset on it. So I went and got a job in an international school teaching English, and everyone came with me. And he was a house husband for about 2 years, which was a whole new experience for him, amongst everything else with us. And yeah, it was really interesting. It was great to live in Beijing. Mind-blowing and fantastic, and an expat life is so pampered as well. You know, I mean, you live in this beautiful little bubble, and there's holidays and nice restaurants, and if you work in an international school, they can pick the best of the best. So all your colleagues are these amazing, sparky people who love their jobs and come into work every morning and use, I got this great idea for a lesson and stuff. So it's fantastic, but it is a charmed bubble, and it gradually became clear that things were changing, and they changed the tax rules, which sent a bit of a message that maybe expats were not as welcome there as we had been. And then, you know, different little things happened that we thought maybe it's time to go. And then we got here to Canada in August 2019. And then, you know what happened, right? COVID happened, China locked down, and we felt a little bit like we dodged a bullet. So
good, brilliant timing.
Pardon, sorry?
Brilliant timing for that.
Yeah, it was really sort of looking around going, wow, didn't see that one coming, but I'm glad we made it out when we did. So
but Belle,
I mean, to clarify, I've still got friends there and they're fine. It's just a very different experience that I'm not sure I would have wanted to go through with kids. So.
The whole world's changed, hasn't it, in the past couple of years? Belle, before we talk about your writing, can you just go back to back a step. You got a first class degree, didn't you, from Oxford, and a PhD
by the
from
skin of my
Leeds?
teeth,
Yeah. That's hats off. That's seriously highly qualified. Didn't you fancy life as an academic?
I did at one point. I was thinking about this, and I did because I loved it. I really loved the research. So I did my PhD on James Joyce and Salman Rushdie.
Wow.
And I can completely geek out about sort of the minutiae of what they get up to in their writing, and I love doing that. But then one day I was in the British Library cafe, and I was sitting there having my lunch, and there were these two blokes a little bit older than me sitting on a table over the other side, and they were talking about Derrida, and they were braying, they were so full of their own intellect and everything, and I understood what they were saying. They weren't saying anything new or interesting, or they were just regurgitating ideas that they'd heard, but they were so pleased with themselves, and I just looked and I thought, I can't spend the rest of my life around people like that because I'll say something and then they'll be outcast. So it was a bit of a thunderclap revelation that no, I can't play that game. So.
I can understand. To move on to your writing, then, you've got 2 books out on Amazon. One of them, the latest one, The Hollow, which is the background behind me, makes me look like a lumberjack. And the other one, which I can't pronounce, with a Latin name, there's something about the vampire moth. Can you pronounce that for me?
All right.
Calyptomortifum.
Very nearly, not bad. Calyptomortiferum.
Mortiferum. I got it right before.
Calyptomortiferum.
Been practicing.
Well, I did make it up, so you can say it any way you like, really.
Oh, right, okay.
I've been Googling it, trying to find what this Latin thing means. Does it mean this vampire moth? But I didn't realise you just made it up.
Well, the calyptra bit's not mine. That's real. That's a species of moth. But mortiferum, I think I put it in Google Translate in the Latin and got killer or something.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So that's where it came from. I don't know why I decided to name my first short story Latin. It's not exactly inviting, is it?
Got links maybe with the academic background, maybe. Do you think?
Maybe. I don't know.
Let's without spoilers. I know that they are short stories, but you can give us the gist of them. The horror, it's in the horror genre that you're writing.
Yeah. So Calyptra is, like you said, it's about vampire moths. And I don't think we need to say any more than that, except that it takes place in a butterfly sanctuary. So it's not sort of Hammer House of horror. It's normal real world, and they find the species of vampire moth, and they're all very excited about it, but they don't really understand the ramifications of what they've got their hands on. And I think that's probably enough about that one.
Okay.
And then The Hollow is about someone who has to go home and pack up the house that they grew up in because their dad is now in a home, and they have to sell the house. And going home awakens all these memories and things that they buried. And one of those things takes on a sort of physical form of something quite frightening.
Okay.
I think that's probably enough for that one, isn't it?
So are you self-published, are you, or you are? So self-published as an indie. Did you find that a painful process, very difficult, or would you have preferred to have gone down the traditional publisher route, which can be long and painful as it is? So what was that all right for you to do it that way? You're happy with that?
I was really lucky because I met a whole bunch of people who I'm working with. So although I am self-published, I have a lot of help with everything. So the beautiful cover that you've got behind you was made by Evelina Steve, who runs a website called As We Write, and she's putting together this mad but brilliant idea of like a Paris writers commune online, where we sort of support each other's work, and we read for each other, and we come up with ideas for each other, and spark off each other. It's really lively, and every day I get up and I go on Discord and someone's had some other new idea and I go, my God, that's brilliant. And there's an energy to it, and it's just wonderful. And I actually, you said, has it been torturous or hard at all? But I kind of feel like I'm playing. I feel like I'm playing with my best friends every day and going, oh, what if we do this? And then, when
wait forever.
So really, when we talked about it, the idea that you've got control over everything as an indie author is really exciting. And I can, it's that sense of chaos and being able to do whatever the heck I want. It's like
you can move the price up and down, you can edit whenever you want, you can change the book cover whenever you want. You're not waiting around for a publisher for a year for them to make a move.
Exactly. And I can market the way I want as well, which is another thing you can't do. So I'm loving it at the moment. I mean, maybe down the line somebody will say, oh, we'll give you lots of money to do everything for you, and I'll put my feet up and drink more tea. But right now, I'm liking it.
As well as those 2 stories we've just talked about, you've got 9 others on Wattpad. Have you thought of, or is there plans for getting more into a compendium, book of the stories?
That's certainly something that's going to come out somewhere down the line. I don't know if all the stuff on Wattpad will go into it. Certainly a lot of it will. But I've been writing some new stuff as well. And so that'll go in there as well. It's quite difficult, isn't it, when you start putting a compendium together? I don't know, have you guys done this kind of thing? But you're like, I don't know, does that count as horror? Is that, can I put that in there? Or is that more sort of, is that more of a whodunit kind of a thing? So you get into those questions, but the plan is definitely down the line somewhere those will be collected together, so it's easier for people to get their hands on them if they want to.
Okay.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. So why did you go for horror as your genre then? Was that what you're really interested in or really wanted to put out there?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I was trying to think about this, and there's no logical reason for it. I do like horror, but it's not the only thing I read. In fact, I'm a complete historical fiction junkie. So
all right, okay. Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe the Caroline influence is in there somewhere. Maybe I'm just a horrible person. That's entirely possible.
I think that's a bit unlikely.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You have to say that though, don't you?
No, not really.
But I was thinking about this the other day when I knew you were going to maybe ask me something about that. I'd forgotten this, but when I was a kid at school, I was only about 13, 14, and I was walking home with a lad in my class who was, just friends, but we lived in the same direction. And we were in Shropshire, so we were walking down the side of this path, down the side of some fields. And I look across at the fields and I go, oh, I could murder you and spread your body across the fields and nobody would ever know. And he was horrified. And he basically sprinted home. And I remember thinking, well, that's weird. I wasn't going to do it. I was just thinking it was a possibility. So I think maybe my brain has always worked that way, that I've looked at the situation and gone, oh, this horrific thing could happen. Wouldn't that be interesting? And then,
to be fair, I think a lot of book writers and authors think that way, because they've got to think beyond the original, or beyond beyond the normal, if you like, to get it out there. As long as you don't actually, as long as you don't actually carry it out,
Well, as long as I'm normal in some company, that's all right then.
I was speaking to Ken Stark. He's got about 9 horror novels out there, like Zombie Apocalypse. And he said something, I only kill people on my pages. And there was a sort of a bit of a gleam in his eyes, he said.
I just finished a short story that I've subbed to a magazine somewhere. And I was horrible to the MC of that one. I don't know, I feel, his name's Ron, and I feel really sorry for him. Poor old Ron. I know you only exist in my imagination, but I am sorry.
Yeah. Well, do you find that your characters come alive when you're writing? You might have like an idea of the plot where it's got to go, but do you find that they go off in their own direction?
God, yeah, absolutely, all the time. I was trying to write for a prompt that Quill and Crow had up the other day that was gargoyles, and I drew this gargoyle picture, and I knew this character's name was Josiah. And he was so vivid, and he refused to go in the story. And he's going in a completely different story now because he insisted on it. So I had to find another story to write. And he was like, no, not doing that. And then in the young adult one on Wattpad, it is called In the Blood, and hopefully that one, because that one's supposed to be part of at least a trilogy. And so later on in the year, the idea is I'm going to give that a proper good editing, get it into shape, and that will come out hopefully at some time as a novel on Amazon, a bit revamped to make a pun because it's about vampires. Okay. And one of the characters in that, a kid called Joe, is he's the sweetest guy. And he's based on someone I knew in real life. And I kept trying to give him a break. I kept trying to make nice things happen for him, but he would always choose the noble, painful way. Whatever I did, it was like, come on, Joe, you've got an opportunity to be happy here. And he's like, no, that would be wrong. So yeah, they do. My characters just like, the minute they're invented, they just start misbehaving all over the place.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm just thinking about other authors we've talked to, Terry, and we've had some different answers. We've not had that answer before, have we? Really,
no,
not quite as dramatic as that. Like, the bouncing and almost saying no to you. You know, so that's quite extreme, I suppose. But if it works for you, and well, that's fine. Yeah. So, what do you enjoy reading yourself? I mean, you write horror, but what do you read for yourself? Do you read horror, or you go completely at a tangent? I think you mentioned historical books before, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm an absolute addict of Bernard Cornwell. And
sharp, yeah.
Oh, love it. And the Last Kingdom stuff.
Oh yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
So good. I just inhaled all that stuff. So I love him. Stephen King, obviously. Daphne du Maurier's horror is amazing. I'd read Rebecca. I hadn't read much of her other stuff, and some of her horror short stories are just mind-blowing. So that's something I've recently discovered that I've really enjoyed. And then, reading stuff by other people that are now contemporary with me. When people say, oh, can you beta read this for me? That's fab as well. So I spend a lot of time reading that. So yeah, anything and everything I can get my hands on, I think, is the answer to that.
Who does your editing? Have you got a beta reader yourself?
I edit my own stuff as much as I can, but as I said, our little Paris commune, we tend to sort of read through each other's things as well and check. And people come up with stuff that, you're like, oh, thank God you caught that. What was I thinking? So, I mean, you guys are both writers, you know this, right? So you write, you read it through 5 times.
You're blind to your own mistakes. Yeah.
Definitely.
So, I think it's always good to get an outside influence, isn't it, to look through your stuff, because you can get mollycoddled into your own little world, I suppose, and think, well, that's how it's got to be, and nobody else's opinion counts for it. I think it's important to have an outside view for definite, but if it works for you, and it's worked for you in the past, and so far 2 books, great.
Yeah. I've got to say as well, Wattpad, that was a new experience for me and mind-blowing. And anyone who's sort of wondering how do I start writing, the instant feedback you get back on Wattpad. So you post something and people comment on it, oh my God, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. And it's such a learning curve as a writer. It's just having that huge, broad, instant feedback of loads of different people's perspectives on it. And that was brilliant. That was like better than any writing course. So
tell us more about that, Bella, because to be honest, I only had to look at Wattpad because I was going to be chatting to you. I was not familiar with it at all. Is this like a writer's forum then, Wattpad?
No, it's actually supposed to be a free readers thing. So I quite mercenarily went on there thinking, well, if I put stuff on here, a lot of people will read it. It doesn't really work like that. Because there seems to be some kind of invisible barrier between the writers and the readers. So everybody who follows you as a writer tends to be a writer, and you get into this read for read thing, which is ultimately self-destroying. But you do get a lot of instant feedback, as I said. Some of it's quite harsh and mean because people are like that, but a lot of it's really constructive and eye-opening, and you're just like, oh yeah, I'd never considered that, but yeah, good point. So yeah, it's really good for that. And so they have things so you can make your own covers, and you can, the beauty of it, I suppose, if you're just starting out in writing, is you get to see your book look like a book, and you get to post it in public, and people can read it and comment on it, and you solidify your idea of what it is you're doing, I suppose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Very, very much so.
What are you working on at the moment then? A third book now, or are you still doing some more short stories or whatever? I don't know.
Tons of stuff in the works. So the next thing is another horror short that's going to drop hopefully around the end of July. So in the last stages of editing that now. And that is another sort of, obviously a horror, about the pandemic and sort of the isolation and the way that plays tricks with your mind, that kind of thing. So that's what that one's about. And then after that, as I said, I'm going to start putting In the Blood into a format where it's a little bit more, a better young adult novel. And hopefully that'll be in shape sort of towards the end of the year. And then I'm also working on, I don't know, you said you had a look on Wattpad, there's a horror short on there called The Manor that I wrote that came third in their Halloween vault competition, which is the best thing I'd ever won, I think. One of the characters from that has been sitting around in my head demanding a story of their own. So she's going to get at least a full length novel and maybe a series, because she's an interesting character who does terrible things and comes back from them, and is psychologically interesting. So yeah, that's
wow.
Yeah. Did you have a particular room for writing? I was going to ask you which country were you most comfortable, but I suppose it's where you are, wherever you are. Have you got like a little back bedroom, a little office space where you can be alone for your writing?
Well, that's where I'm right now. I'm in the guest room, which you can see. It looks really nice and tidy here, doesn't it? But this is what's on the desk next to me.
Looks normal. What's the picture behind you, Bella?
Pardon?
What's the picture behind you?
Oh, this is by my friend, Joe Evans, who's a brilliant artist. One of the people that I met when I was an international teacher, very talented. And it's a shipwreck in Argentina, which is where she used to live. Yeah. You can't really see it from here, but it's lovely. And I keep it up there to show me what talent looks like.
Okay. Can I ask you about other social media? We talked about Wattpad and we've chatted on Twitter. Do you use any other social media platforms for promoting the web?
I'm on Instagram. I've got two on there. At the moment, I'm juggling the Beldam and F.K.Marlowe, and not quite sure how that's going to go at the moment. It kind of feels like the Beldam is what you get with me, like, and F.K.Marlowe is when I'm trying to be proper and professional and have my respectable head on. So I don't know how that's going to work going forward. At some point, the two are going to have to meld, I think. Yeah. But so both of those are on Instagram, and then I do have a website, fkmarlowe.com, and actually that's got free little tiny horror stories on it, a couple of those, and there's a new one every month if anyone fancies a free dose of fear.
Where can people get hold of your work? Amazon? Your website?
Amazon at the moment, yeah. I am on Ko-fi as well, so there's not much there at the minute though. So yeah, I mean, like, I'm still a baby writer. I only published my first thing in April, and I did a writing course at UBC in May last year, and that was the first time that I think anyone had ever read anything that I'd written. I've been writing all my life. I've just been too chicken to put it where anyone could see it. So I'm still, like I said, very much not really. I'm still, what am I doing? So I think going forward, Amazon and a couple of other platforms, but if you connect with me on Twitter, you'll be able to see where everything is. That's kind of the central point. Or you can go to aswewrite.com, which is Evelina Steve's site, and she's really Mrs. Organized, and she's very good at sort of, you can find things on her site that you can't on mine. So so that would be a good place for them to start.
Okay. Do you know what? I know you say you may be a newly published writer, not a new writer, but your enthusiasm shines through, and it looks like you've got loads of ideas bubbling away there.
I'm loving it. I feel like I've been set free because all my life I've been a little bit scared, you know, to jump in. I've been terrified that if I wrote something, people say that's terrible.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
And just
that's normal, isn't it? Yeah.
This week I went on LinkedIn for the first time and I said, look, this is what I've been doing, and I dropped the link to my book. And I was so scared. I had to go out the rest of the day with my daughter. We went to an art gallery and I was shaking so badly I couldn't hold a cup.
Oh dear.
But everyone's been so lovely, and a couple of my ex-students came back and put really sweet messages, and yeah, so that was really nice. That made me feel a little bit more like maybe this isn't such a crazy idea.
Well, in a way, it's your baby, isn't it? You know, you're putting your baby out there in the world, you know, on its own legs for the first time. You know, you're bound to be nervous, think, oh, how will my baby be accepted?
Well, people think my baby's ugly.
One final question. I know you mentioned before, you touched on this, but what advice would you give to a new writer, someone who's thinking, I've got an idea in my head, but, you know, what shall I do?
Oh, I've learned so much over the last couple of months. First of all, shoot fear in the head and drop kick it to the curb. That's the thing. It's such a constraint. Get rid of your self-doubt. Let somebody else tell you you're no good. Don't do it yourself. And the other thing that's really big for me is if you want it to be a job, you've got to treat it like a job. There's no good writing one story and expecting to put it in the world and have people go, oh, that's amazing, you've arrived. You know, you've got to treat it like a job. You wouldn't say, I want to be a teacher and then do 1 3-week course and then not do anything else and expect to get a job as a teacher. You know, you've got to put the work in, you've got to put the hours in. And that was revelatory to me, because when I started saying, you know what, I do want to do this, I do want to take it seriously, and I am going to put the time in, then you start to see the results really quickly. So
well, consistency then with the message.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stick at it.
I remember this writer came to a school that I taught in, and she said she had an old belt of her granddad's, and she used to get up at 6 o'clock. Hey, Steve's back.
Hey.
Catherine Rundell, her name was. She used to get this old belt of granddad's, get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she'd strap herself into a chair with this belt.
What?
She wouldn't let herself stop writing for an hour. Hello, Steve.
Hello, sorry, lost my connection, just wiped me out, sorry.
Yeah, I know, we missed you. I thought it scared you off.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
But anyway, she said she strapped to the chair with this belt of her granddad's, and she wasn't allowed to undo it until she'd written for an hour. And she obviously could undo it, but she didn't want to think about her granddad being disappointed in her. And that was her discipline. And I think, you know, if you've got some kind of discipline like that, so that you write every day.
Yeah.
You know, it's this thing everyone says, a writer writes, right?
No, very true. I wouldn't go to as far as strapping myself down, but maybe wear a pair of lucky socks, maybe.
You know what? To each his own.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
The one I always ask was, if you haven't asked it already, is any advice for new writers? What is the best thing to start with? What's the best way to go? You know, and just a few tips on how you would tell a new writer to go about things.
You get a belt, don't you, Bella?
You get a belt and you strap yourself down.
All right, okay.
I do think, talk to people about it is the good idea, and get people to say, have you written today? Because that'll make you do it. The other thing was, I was thinking about, quite often I'm going, I need to write, but I haven't got an idea. And just wander out into the house and say to someone, I'm going to write about this, and they'll say something, and like that you'll get an idea from what they've said, and they might say something simple. So the other day I was trying to find a story for a prompt about horror in your home. You know, so the home should be the place that's safe, but yours is horrific or something was the prompt. And I walked out and said to myself, I can't think of anything. And he went, write about bugs, they spook you out, write about bugs. And I was like, that's it, awesome, that's what I'm doing.
It's a good way to get inspiration.
So what do you do about when your stories come to you? Do you write notes, or do you keep it in your head, or do you straight away go to your keyboard? Which way do you find best for you?
I have to scribble it down instantly because I'll forget it. So post-it notes all over the place with scribble bits of paper with it. But you then look at 24 hours later and you go,
what's that mean?
What's that mean? Yeah. But Bella, I think our time's got about to run out, but it's been an absolute delight chatting with you.
Oh,
Really
it's been
appreciate
lovely.
your time.
Had a wonderful Sunday morning. Thanks, guys.
Oh, good.
Of course, Sunday morning for you in Vancouver, isn't it? Yeah, whereas Sunday evening.
Yeah, you can all go down the pub now. Pubs are open, aren't they? For you?
Oh yeah,
yeah, been open all day.
Well, for me.
Will do. All right. Well, thanks, Bella. Let's keep in touch as we have been.
That'll be fab. All right. Thanks
Brilliant.
so much, guys.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Fast.